So I'm here with Father Michael Butler. Is that how you like to be referred to? Is that your title, or what I
That's
can
my
call you?
that's my title. That
Mhm.
most of my parishioners call me Father Michael. You can call me what you'd like.
Father Michael sounds great. Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
Good. So we met in Denmark, in northern Denmark, at a large event called the European Men's Gathering.
Hmm.
There's about 100 men there, and often these events are quite secular events. People from all kinds of different backgrounds come. Not much talk about religion usually, but I was surprised to see you there, to see a priest there, and I actually thought that was very wonderful, and I think people really responded to having a priest present, right?
I was I was a little hesitant as well. The organizer of the event and I had met several months ago, and we are both Orthodox Christians, and that played into the establishment of our relationship. And
Mhm.
we discovered each other on an online men's forum. And so, wow, an Orthodox priest who is actually interested in men's work. I'm some sort of unicorn, and I might be. I really
Mhm.
might be in that respect. But we talked more, and he thought I had something that I might offer to the European Men's Gathering, and I went in order to do one of the rituals for the event. I ended up being participant, having a much larger role in about four of the rituals, which was really kind of wonderful for me. But I went with a great deal of trepidation, and I said, look, I can wear civvies. I don't have to play up the religion aspect. My understanding is Northern Europe, Scandinavia is largely secular society.
Yeah.
I don't want to give offense. Let the mission of the European Men's Gathering be its mission. I'm here to support that and to help that, and not to be a distraction.
Yeah.
And it turned out I was more warmly received than I thought, which was very nice. And by the end of it, I found out that in fact there were a number of participants who were practicing and believing Christians, and were, like you said, kind of gratified to see that there was someone who was, not only Christian privately, but sort of ordained and paid and professional Christian as well.
Mhm.
And it seemed to have given a little different flavor to the event. And if there
Yeah,
would
I
have been
think that's right, and I also wonder if the fact that it's such a secular society, right, in Northern Europe, and that people are really hungry for religion,
it might
spirituality,
be.
and that might be one of the reasons why you're so warmly received, because in their everyday life, probably they have no religion, and then, but obviously in my opinion, that's a void,
Mhm.
in the secular society. So perhaps that was one of the reasons. Perhaps people who are not Christian, I'm a Buddhist myself,
Mhm.
appreciated your presence there for that reason.
Now, I always find, it's always easy to speak to devout people of whatever religious tradition it is. There's just sort of a common underlying set of assumptions that make it easy to have a good conversation. So that's
Hmm.
always been kind of pleasant. Dealing with the secular and the atheist is a little more difficult, because there's some fundamental assumptions we don't share, and yet, I'm not a hard sell. I don't push really hard, and I kind of wait for people to ask, or to make inquiry, and then I'm willing to talk freely. If you want my
Mhm.
opinion on something, be prepared to have it, because I'll tell it to you honestly. But we got on fine. I think one of the uh, I'll save it. It'll come up later in conversation, I'm sure. But one of the comments I got from guys, I will tell you this though.
Mhm.
It was extremely gratifying to me. The last ritual that we did was a blessing of the elders, or a blessing of the fathers, in which um, one of your other regular guests, Alexander Bard,
Mhm.
and Eli Buren, and myself, who served as sort of ritual elders and elders for the European Men's Gathering, all offered blessings to men individually, and they would
Mhm.
come up to us individually for a blessing. And at least half of the men who came to see me either came or left with tears in their eyes. Just the to encounter an older man, a father figure, and that's
Mhm.
what I am. who can speak a word of affirmation and really offer a kind of blessing and really look and see the man in front of him, and to offer a word of encouragement and blessing was so powerful. After that particular ritual, I found out 3 men had a profound experience of God during the encounter, which I wasn't aware of at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And 4 other men came up and told me that I had restored their faith in Christ and his church. Now, they didn't say they were going to church or whatnot. I understood sort of the background of those statements was that at some point they'd become alienated or dissatisfied or disappointed in the church, and maybe there was something okay about it after all. So it turned out, by the end to have been profoundly moving to me, to be a part of other men's experiences like that, and to
yeah, and it wasn't a sense of aggressive proselytizing or anything like that.
no,
It was just a heart-to-heart sort of,
oh yeah,
encounter. Yeah. Mm.
I don't do any hard sells, proselytizing. No, that's God's job to convert people. If I can make, as much as I've always said, if I can make a reasonable case for what I believe, so that someone else, asking in good faith, can say, I can see how someone would believe that.
Yeah,
that's as much as I care to do. Yeah. And then it's up to God's action in a person's heart as to what they do with that.
So I wonder about that. I mean, in terms of your Orthodox Christianity, and I wonder because I grew up in sort of progressive milieu with a very I think that the sort of Protestantism that I was exposed to was very, let's say, unimpressive to me at the time. Like there was nothing, there wasn't this, and yet there was a kind of proselytizing spirit which turned me off right away and drove me towards Eastern religion and things where people were not trying to tell me what reality was and where I could sit and meditate and find that for myself. So I wonder if the Orthodox tradition is less of a proselytizing faith than perhaps some of the Protestant traditions, or I don't know. There's something about the Orthodox tradition that appeals to me on some level, and I don't know why particularly, but I wonder about that.
The Orthodox have always been mission-minded. Uh-huh. In fact, here in the United States, Orthodoxy came with the immigrant communities from Eastern Europe and from the Mediterranean basin at different waves, either after World War I or after World War II, or more recently because of the troubles in the Middle East. Here in Greater Detroit, there is a huge Arab community, and so a lot of Arab-speaking Christians from Lebanon, Syria, have fled troubles in the Middle East, so they are now here. And the other local parish here in my town here is massively involved with settling immigrants from the Middle East and helping them to get their feet under themselves. But Orthodoxy is always, so in America, it's always been sort of a missionary sort of effort. Once immigration dies out, we either have to missionize or we die. But historically also, the church has always reached out. There's interesting accounts in a small group of Greek merchants went to Lyon in France, I think in the early 2nd century, and within 30 years, all of Gaul had been converted. And all, it was Byzantium which sent the missionaries up into the Slavic lands, which is why the East Slavic countries, Russia and Ukraine and all, are Orthodox to this day. The first Orthodox bishop in America, Saint Innocent, was in Irkutsk in eastern Siberia, and at different times, and oversaw translation of service books into local Siberian languages, native Alaskan languages, and all. But it seems that Orthodox mission work never seemed to have that kind of heavy stigma. We didn't go in to preach the gospel at the end of a sword, as the Catholics did in Latin America, for example. If that did take,
or there's this holy roller sort of thing in America where people preach on the street corner and give you pamphlets and that sort of thing.
Yes, I find that extremely obnoxious and off-putting. And I was in Dallas for about a dozen years, which is called the Buckle of the Bible Belt.
It's the Bible Belt down there, yeah.
Yes, they call it the Bible Belt, and Dallas is the buckle, and I encountered a great many of those people. And my thought on that is that they are well-intentioned, but I think they are also going to have to answer for all of the people whom they turned away from Christ and his gospel because of an obnoxious presentation of it.
Mm-hmm.
And there is somewhat of a revival evangelistic tradition in America that goes back to the great revivals of the 19th century, and I think that's where it comes from. But, you know, that dog won't hunt anymore, and it's not an effective means. And you're right, I am embarrassed personally whenever I encounter it.
Yeah. But I wonder what the appeal then, I know, you know, there are people, I keep hearing about the Orthodox tradition bubbling up now, and I wonder, it seems to be growing at the moment, and it seems to have an appeal to people, and rather than the other, you know, because there's so many different kinds of Christianity you could be involved with. What is the strong appeal of the Orthodox tradition right now? I mean, I assume you think it's important, and why is it important? And
I can poke at that question. I don't have a real, you know, succinct answer to it. I wish I did, because I'd bottle it. I really would. But
perhaps I could ask you that question from your own perspective. Like, why did you become an Orthodox, minister instead of something else?
Yeah, I was raised Roman Catholic. I grew up in East Texas. As a boy. Most of my family was fundamentalist Southern Baptist.
Yeah.
My grandmother snuck across the border to Louisiana and married a Cajun who was Catholic. And so my mother was Catholic. And so I was baptized Catholic and raised Catholic as well. I found my father died when I was 8 years old. Mama got mad at God and quit going to church. But I found some comfort in religion, even as a young boy. When I was 15, I had a rather strong, one of those sort of lightning bolt conversion experiences, which really turned my life inside out. And it set me on a strong religious quest after that. I'm a priest today out of gratitude for that one moment. It was in, February 4th, 4:45 p.m., 1975. I remember it like it was yesterday. So
your conversion just happened in a moment, right? Is that a common, experience for a lot of people, or is it often more gradual, or?
It's extremely varied. It's extremely varied.
Yeah, must be varied.
Stories. It's one of the delights I have when people come to me who are interested in Orthodoxy and are looking into the church. I always ask them some form of the question: tell me about your lived experience with God up to this point in your life. And what people's experience is so varied. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to hear these stories that people have, and they're so varied. There's absolutely no pattern to it whatsoever.
Yeah.
And in my case, I had fallen into a rough crowd in middle school and begun stealing stuff from the school and got caught. And I kind of went to confession for the first time in my life. I don't remember the confession. I was just scared to death. But I walked out of the church that February afternoon. And please, this was South Texas, so it's subtropical. So it was really very pleasant, the weather then. It was not, a European winter. And as I walked down the sidewalk, the world just changed suddenly. All of the light went golden. I heard the song that creation sings to God. I can't describe that song except that grass is somehow sopranos and trees are somehow basses. I can't put it any other than that. And I knew in an instant that there was a God, that he was personal, and that he loved me. And it turned my life inside out. And I have not been the same person since. So it started a strong, religious quest in my own life. I thought for a long time I wanted to be a Catholic priest. And when I'd gone to a Catholic university, and I was going to graduate and probably go into a Capuchin Franciscan monastery was sort of my early hope. And then I thought, no, I'd rather get a master's degree. And I looked at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh for a graduate degree in clinical psychology. And while I was looking there, I discovered the Byzantine Rite Catholic Church in Pittsburgh. and I attended a liturgy, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. This was what worship was supposed to be like. Why the hell has this been hidden from me for my whole life? I've been looking and hungering for this. So I went back to Dallas and discovered a small Byzantine Rite mission that met there sporadically. I couldn't get enough from the poor priest, and so I eventually walked into the Orthodox Cathedral in Dallas and became Orthodox after that.
So there's something about the beauty of the tradition that,
Yes.
that pulled you in.
Initially, it was an aesthetic response. The liturgy was beautiful. The church was beautiful. The singing was beautiful. In time, that matured into a deeper appreciation. Orthodoxy, because it never went through an enlightenment, it never went through sort of a modernist period. Its liturgy and the liturgical understanding, sort of the mind of the fathers, as we speak of it, and the tradition, is pre-modern. And so it's very archetypal, very symbolic, very rich and very deep, and polyvalent, layers upon layers of meaning that all, work on each other at the same time. And I found it a beautiful and a very rich environment that also included a very practical application in daily life. Orthodox is like an entire way of life. So there is a regular routine of fasting. There's a regular rule of daily prayer. There's a regular cycle of feasts and fasts. Orthodoxy is a bit more personal.
Right. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
so is it that you're not just expected to believe a bunch of things and go to church, that there's actual like things you do, every day, like,
yes, in that
like
respect,
practices that are transforming you. Yeah.
Yes. In fact, I sort of, in later reflection, I came to realize that the purpose of Orthodox observance was very much to sanctify daily time and space. So every home has got an icon corner in it, which is the family altar and is the center of devotion. Time is sanctified by the recurring cycles of feasts and fasts. So there are seasons in the year, Great Lent, the 40 days before Easter, or Pascha for us. We don't eat meat. Our entire, everything in the kitchen changes. We have a set of recipes and things that we cook only during Lent. And so it does, it gives texture to life. And I think that's one of the strong appeals that it has for people, is that they're, in America, which is increasingly secular, Sunday is just the same as Saturday or Monday, and all the days are sort of the same, but this gives a rhythm and a texture to the week that otherwise is missing. It gives a strong reference for meaning, for understanding the world and understanding life. It gives a set of regular daily practices that people can take, and everyone will do to their own degree. But you can dive deep into Orthodox practice, and it does not take long before you see the changes in your own life, that your heart softens, repentance becomes easier, a love for your neighbor actually begins to blossom in ways that it hadn't before. So we've been at it for 2,000 years. The proof is in the pudding. And a part of that also, if I can just go one step further, we've had this interesting phenomenon in the last couple of years where we have been attracting a lot of young men. I have received about a dozen, like 20-something, early 30-something men into the church, which was the last demographic I thought I would ever see in any numbers coming in. And talking with them, what they really found appealing in Orthodoxy was that we had structure, we had meaning, we had discipline, there was a depth of understanding and theology to it, so it wasn't shallow. We're not that emotional of a church either. I mean, feeling is there, but we don't try to whip it up or evoke it. And because it's a very traditional and I guess conservative faith, we are not feminists. And
I wonder if that's related to the Jordan. I'm sorry I interrupted. Can you say the last thing again, because I didn't hear the last thing?
Yeah, and I said, because we're not really feminists. We tend to be very traditional, our understanding of gender roles and all. They don't feel their masculinity is threatened or condemned or criticized in Orthodoxy. And especially for young men nowadays, that seems to be increasingly a problem. So, and I understand where these young men are coming from. So, and again, like the men at the European men's gathering, to have an older man who can affirm them and bless them, and be an encouragement to them, it's like water to a thirsty man.
Right. It seems that people are lacking today this generational, transmission, among
Yes,
other
very
things.
much.
Yeah.
Very
And I
much.
wonder if that has some of these men that are coming to you. I wonder if it has to do with kind of the Jordan Peterson phenomenon in
Oh yeah.
sense, right? It's like all these
Yes.
men started to become like, all these hippie men started to become kind of, into, taking responsibility and cleaning their room and becoming, being interested in tradition and that sort of.
Yeah. It's absolutely true. And there were a number of the young men who came to me and explicitly said, yes, Jordan Peterson is what is who led me here.
Yeah, that's a funny
And
thing, huh? Because he doesn't belong to any church. He
and this
just,
is his genius,
yeah,
and God bless him.
yeah.
I don't keep up with them. I don't have time to keep up with them as much as I would like to. I in some respects, the man is a genius. But one of the things that I think is particularly appealing to him for young people is that he doesn't belong to a church. He is
Yeah,
himself sort of a seeker. He's genuinely after the truth, and he's looking for that.
yeah,
And he sort of says, it's that away.
yeah,
Somewhere it's that away. If you clean up your room, if you take responsibility, you stand up straight, you try to speak the truth, you don't give in to evil. If you
yeah,
go that away, you're going to find it. And so the young men who are genuinely seekers will say, okay, I'm going to go that away. Well, where does that go? And they start taking the second step and then the third step, and they end up with me.
yeah. Very
Or I
interesting.
assume other churches, but I know it's not just me that's receiving these young men. I've talked to Orthodox clergy all over the United States, and it seems to be a phenomenon everywhere. So there is a wave, and it was responding to that. That's what got me sort of interested again in just doing men's work in order to minister more appropriately to what the real needs of these young men are. That got me onto an online men's community where I subsequently met Paul, which subsequently got me into the European men's gathering. So it was the manifest need of taking care of young men that were coming and desperately hungry for something.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It seems that that the culture has sort of, is very very negative towards masculinity. Masculinity is considered toxic, and
Yes,
and dangerous and violent and but of course that's not what real masculinity is. And
that's true. That's
yeah,
true. And I forget who said it. I came across it in a little meme or a quotation recently. It says, a good man is not a weak man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that shit under control.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think there's a lot of truth in that.
Maybe that's a good segue to talk about the other unusual thing about you, if I could say so, is your bodybuilding
I
habit.
knew that
Or
would come up.
it has to come up because it's so unlikely. It's like usually our cliche stereotypical vision of a priest is somebody who's very humble and diminutive and
Yes.
whereas bodybuilding seems to be the ultimate sort of vanity show on some level. I'm just wondering about that about you. I find that very interesting that you have this drive, to be a priest, but also to perfect your body on some level.
Yeah, thank you. I
And it
tried
is a
for,
very impressive body. I've seen it actually.
well,
If
thank
you
you.
don't mind me saying so.
No, that's quite all right. And I did win my last show, so I've
Congratulations.
done well lately with it.
Uh-huh.
I tried for years to sort of reconcile some way my bodybuilding and my identity as a priest. And about 5-6 years ago, I just gave up.
Uh-huh.
When I was a little boy, I don't know if you've come from Canada, you might have seen them. I don't know if they did in Europe, if they had. Do you remember in the comic books, the back of the comic books, the Charles
Yeah,
Atlas
the
ad?
Charles Atlas picture,
Yeah, you know, the little
yeah.
cartoon of the guy on the beach with sand getting kicked in his
He had
face.
sand kicked in his face, and he wanted
Yes,
to be
yes.
like the big guy with the,
Yeah.
yeah.
I remember I was 7 or 8 years old when I saw that, and I said, that looks fascinating. I want to look like that. And I was not. I was a fat kid, especially after my dad's death. I think I kind of turned to food. I know I was depressed, and I was the fat kid. We said husky in those days, but I knew husky was code for fat. And I had no athletic ability whatsoever. That drove me to academic work, and and all, which is the only thing I excelled in. But I was fat most of my life, and when I was and then when in middle age, I thought, well, I still would I'd like to look better than I look. I still held that there's this physical ideal. I wonder if I could ever attain anything like that. And so I would work out, but I was the middle-aged guy, on the treadmill who never lost any fat, and the guy who would pick up the dumbbells and never seemed to get any stronger. And I didn't know what I was doing wrong until I was about 53 years old. And I said to my wife, I'm tired of being old, gray, fat, and ugly. And I want to do something.
So at 53, that's really inspiring. I'm 49.
Yeah. Which footnote to that,
yeah.
Everybody who happens to be watching this, if you take one thing away from what I'm saying, is do not put off your dreams. Do not put off your dreams. Failure is a very bitter thing, but regret is 10 times worse. And I wish I had done it in my 20s and my 30s and my 40s. Don't wait until you're too old to realize your dreams. Please. Okay. Find some way to engage with that.
But there's also something inspiring about the possibility that one could do that, and one could have that kind of energy to do that at that, at 53 as well.
Yeah. So when I was 53, I told my wife this and that I wanted to do something about it. And I hired an online coach for one of these 12-week transformation programs. And she said we had the money. So I signed up for it. And I learned how to eat. He fixed my diet. I was not eating nearly enough or eating the right things. And I didn't have a good progression for my exercises. So I got a customized workout and diet. I started getting stronger and the fat started coming off, and it was wonderful. So when the 12 weeks was over, I looked around and said, I work really well with a deadline and with a goal. Who here does a contest? And one man's name came up repeatedly. And I say, okay, where do I find this guy? So I finally found him, and I went and visited him, and I told him all of this stuff. And he says, well, I can't guarantee you'll win, but I can make sure you look like you belong on a stage. And I said, that's fine. Just bucket list item. Let me do this one time. The only thing I don't want to come in last. Well, so I did this little show. I actually, when I was 53, I lost 40 pounds. I lost 8 inches off my waist. I can't do centimeters. That's, 15, 16 centimeters off my waist. That's 20 kilos, almost 20 kilos. I went from 23 to 8% body fat. I saw my abs for the first time in my life. They're actually like giant ravioli. I'm kind of pleased with my abs. And I did this men's physique show. So I got to wear like surfer board shorts that went from my waist down to my knees. But the very thought of standing even that exposed in front of 2,000 total strangers, man, that will keep you on a diet. Believe you me. And I didn't come in last. I came in 5th out of 6. And I kind of got hooked. I enjoyed the process. I realized I could make some progress. I really love my coach. And so he says, let's work on this and see what you can do next year. And so I kept at it, and I make a little progress every year. I mean, I'm not huge. If you hadn't have mentioned it, no one would know by looking at me, in clothes that I'm a bodybuilder. I don't have I'm not gorilla huge. I don't have wide shoulders, but, and I never post pictures of myself on social media. My bishop knows what I do, but that was our agreement. Because the first time I posted a picture of myself on social media, somebody got a hold of it and turned me into a meme, which made its way all the way to the office of the Metropolitan Archbishop. And my phone rang one morning and it said, Father Michael, please hold for the chancellor of the church. And I had a very awkward conversation. And then I
Oh
had
my
to call my
goodness.
bishop, where I had an even more awkward conversation. And we agreed that it would be all right if I did this, but just not to post pictures on social media.
Not to post pictures on social media.
Yeah.
Somehow
so as not to give rise to scandal to anyone who,
for me, that makes me trust you more somehow, that you have this other side of you. Because if a person presents too pure of an image of, or that's, somehow we don't trust somebody who has too much of a pure persona. You know what I mean?
I know.
Does that make any sense?
Here I am. I'm Orthodox priest. My beard is too short. My hair is too short.
Yeah.
I should probably be 250 pounds and have some fake Russian accent so I look and sound like proper Orthodox priest. And, there are some people who, just don't get me, want me to, embody sort of their expectation or their persona. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
My congregation knows what I do. I have overwhelming support from my congregation. There are a few who grumble at it. So I don't do it for them. I don't do it for their validation. So I just let it go. If someone asks, I'll talk about it. But if nobody asks, I do it for myself, and it remains unspoken.
Well, you have my support. I think it's wonderful.
And again, especially with dealing, like I said, with this population of younger men that have been attracted to Orthodoxy lately.
Yeah.
When they find out that the priest pumps iron, so I am the coolest priest in the world now.
Right.
So that opens the door to everything.
That opens the door, right? That's also part of the whole thing, isn't it? Yeah.
And when you get a 73-year-old grandmother come up and tell you, because of you, Father Michael, I went and joined a gym and I feel so much better now, you're doing something right.
Great. Yeah. Well, when we were speaking earlier today, or when we were emailing exchange, you actually asked me, what should I wear for this interview? I said, of course you have whatever you want, but it would be wonderful if you would wear your priest, I don't know what you call it in your tradition.
This is cassock.
It's called a cassock. So, my question is, religious people tend to, I've met Tibetan Buddhists that wear crazy hats and wildly colored robes and what are the costumes, of priesthood and of religion? What are they there for? Because there is something about you wearing this outfit that has a kind of power to it, Yes. And I have this image of you at the men's group in front of this huge fire in your priestly robes, and there was a bunch of guys dancing around like sort of pagans, and I have this like image of Christianity and paganism sort of, meeting on some level.
That was totally cool. Yes.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. Yeah. But it could be sort of, for some people that could be kind of disturbing but anyway.
Well, as you may remember, I did not wear my cross.
Right.
When I was at the European Men's Gathering.
Right.
I thought that might be offensive to some or a little too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not go there as a representative of the Orthodox Church in an official capacity as a priest.
Yeah.
My priesthood in that respect was somewhat incidental, but it is part of who I am. So, it couldn't really be hidden. So I, like a lot of things, I sort of wore it lightly. And the cassock, this thing is floor length black dress with long sleeves. This is, technically this is my underwear. There is an outer layer that's got great big billowy sleeves that you're supposed to wear on top of it, but it's just really hot and I don't wear it very often. And in Russian tradition, the big gold cross identifies me as an archpriest. It changes in different cultures, but if you know how to read the signs, that's what it says. It's for social significance. It identifies me as a clergyman, because there are a set of expectations that go with that. The cassock also, for me, it doesn't regulate my behavior that much. I mean, I'm not going to take off the cassock so I can go to some sleazy bar somewhere or whatnot. I don't go to sleazy bars anyway. But, there are some expectations that go along with it. And sometimes I do wear this in public. and sometimes it evokes very nice conversations with people. Sometimes it just attracts ding-dongs, loonies, and wombats, and you don't really want to go there. So like when I travel very often, I will not wear religious garb of any kind because I want to be just left alone. You know, I don't want to sit through an entire flight with somebody who's got crazy religious ideations, you know, who wants to, you know, regale me with, you know, with whatever. Just, you know, let it go. So sometimes it attracts too much attention of the wrong kind. And I've learned over the years sort of to moderate what I wear and in what circumstances and all. So
Okay.
as you see at the European Men's Gathering, I wore a t-shirt and shorts like pretty much everybody else. You know, but when it came time for the ritual where I had an official role as in a leadership capacity, then it was appropriate to put this on. And that's when I did. And when that was over, I took it back off.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's also a question of, you know, when you wear a certain outfit, it's like a practice. It's like of attention or
it focuses my mind. That's for sure. Yeah.
Okay. I had I sent you a few questions, and one of the things I learned about you, I'm not sure where I learned this, is that you have some Aboriginal blood or something like that. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that you have some relationship to the North American Aborigine people of some kind?
Not really.
Not really.
That part is not so. No, my paternal great-grandmother was full-blooded Choctaw Indian. And so I am an 8th Choctaw. And I jokingly refer, the only part of that shows in me is that I have no tolerance for alcohol whatsoever. And I've never been able to build one up. I'm the cheapest drunk you'll ever meet. But it is part of my day. I'm largely Irish, French, and Native American. And after that, I think British, various kinds, Scottish, English, Welsh. You know, Americans are always interested in their ethnic heritage because, you know, in sort of the melting pot, we lose identity so easily, and we cling to something to identify ourselves. But it is interesting to me. My mother is a professional genealogist, so, you know, I sort of know my history as well as I can. And when I have traveled around the United States, I do make a point of trying to visit tribal lands and see what's going on with the Native American people. And in some cases, it's very refreshing. In other cases, it's kind of pathetic. You know, the Choctaw were in the southern United States. They were Southern Woodland Indians. They were part of the tribes that were on the so-called Trail of Tears in the 1830s, where they were their land was confiscated by the government, and they were forced to walk all the way to the new Indian Territory, which is now the state of Oklahoma, and along which thousands died. It was, you know, it was not quite a Bataan death march, but it was clearly designed for not so many people to survive it well. My particular family was slightly disobedient and didn't go into the Indian Territory like they were supposed to. They turned aside at the last minute and went into Arkansas. So as a result, I'm not on any of the official Indian rolls, and I don't appear on any of the official tribal records because we were not where we were supposed to be. But I mean, you see pictures of my grandmother, and it's very clear. This little 4'9" woman with her high cheekbones and her little hook nose, and she looks just as Native American as anybody could. And it's just part of who I am, and I take some pride in that.
That's great. Okay. So the other questions I had were, I wanted to. I just wanted you I wanted to know a little bit more about the Orthodox tradition, and I also wanted to know about, just about your view of, why you think religion is important. Why people need religion, because most people, I guess we have less and less people who are religious and in the West, and religion seems to a lot of people to be a return to some sort of archaic thing that we've gone beyond through progressing and through science and through that kind of thing. So why would somebody become religious? Why do we need to become religious? In your view?
That's a good question. I hear echoes of Alexander Bard in the background of it, but
In what sense?
no. Anytime you say something archaic, we will have to. I would dearly love to get in on a conversation with Alexander and you sometime.
Sure.
We did not have nearly enough time to talk, me and Alexander, when I was in Europe. We had one really extended conversation, but there was wine involved, and my acuity goes down with the more that I drink. So, there's a whole lot there that's
well,
fascinating.
he said he learned something from you about sort of Neoplatonism or in the Orthodox tradition, or the Neoplatonic roots, or
which is good, because Mr. Bard tends to conflate a lot of Christian traditions into somewhat of a mishmash, and I'm sometimes surprised at some of the things which he says. But we'll leave that there. I won't talk about him behind his back.
Okay. Well, yeah. Anyway, I'm sure he'd love to have a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is by the way. Why do people need religion? Hard question. St. Augustine says in the very first chapter of his Confessions, the very first paragraph, Lord, you have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. And there seems to be some kind of elemental hunger or dissatisfaction or some sort of an itch that's never fully scratched that most people have. And I think when people run out of distractions or whatever else they use to try to scratch the itch, when they ultimately find that nothing will scratch it, I think they finally look to something transcendent. And religion provides that. I
was teaching a class today on the film The Matrix. It reminded me of what you said, because Neo says there's a splint, or Morpheus says to Neo that you have this feeling that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, and it's just, and then there's a splinter in your mind that's driving you crazy. And
very good, exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
And you have this big question, and you feel like you're living in an in a simulation. More and more, especially with the internet, and people are searching for the real in some sense, and they don't know often where to look for it.
And I would argue that. What would I argue? I'll speak to my own experience then, and I think the tradition of the church is that what is really real is fundamentally God, and who has established the world in a particular created order. And when we align ourselves with that order, we're happier and we tend to flourish more. And so religion is a salvation from, first, the tyranny of our own subjectivity, and as well a liberation from any and all kinds of ideologies as well. It should be ultimately about what is most real. And in Christian understanding, the same God who created the natural and physical order is the same one who gave us the scriptures. So what is in the scriptures should correspond with reality as well. And I have very little patience for people who find an opposition between religion and science. There should not be any opposition, because God is the author of both of them. And that ultimately then, if I can bring my life into conformity with what is ultimately real, then I ought to function optimally. I've been given a particular kind of hardware and a particular kind of software, and if I simply operate according to the way that I'm designed to, I tend to flourish. It's when we live contrary to that problems arise. And then people look to all sorts of alternative things in order to, as they say, scratch the itch. Yeah. And you know what they are, whether it be binge watching Netflix, sex, drugs, rock and roll, too much football on Saturday afternoons, or whatever it is. And you can always find out that things are not satisfying or are addictive, because you always need more and more of them, and it satisfies less and less.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And maybe you need a community of people who are in search of meaning, who are not just drifting through their lives.
Community
In
is
some sense.
important, and
Mhm.
that was one of the discussions Alexander and I had, all too brief, because I'm very sensitive to sort of the atomic individualism that's very much in vogue in American culture, and I think it goes very much too far. Um, what the alternative is that doesn't end up in some kind of collectivism, I don't really know, but it's a very interesting question, I think worth considering. But a community where people can remain themselves and yet be in some relationship with other people who are supportive and loving, yeah, it optimizes human flourishing. I think it's how we're supposed to be. In Christian understanding, this is why human life is a reflection of God, who is a trinity of persons loving each other, and so it is impossible for us to be individualistic or alone, and to flourish. In fact, the first thing God says in the scriptures in the book of Genesis is that it is not good for man to be alone. And so to find a community, whether it's a community of marriage or a community in a monastery, or a good community of friends, but you got to have that kind of support. You need it not only for support, but you need someone else out there to call you on your own bullshit, when you're off base, who can lovingly correct you and be there when you're down. All the other sort of things that, close friends and family will do for you.
Great. Great.
And ideally, your church can provide that kind of community. Whether it, it does or not is.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the church, doesn't it? Or it depends on the quality of the individuals in the church and
it's
the
true.
quality of the leadership as well, right?
I'd like to think. And God give them better leadership than what they've got now, but
Okay. So is there anything you would like to say perhaps to our listeners? Some of our listeners will be, men from the men's group, movement, because I believe Paul is going to share this on that website. Okay. Some of them will be probably, my listeners and listeners to the podcast.
May I ask who primarily is your audience?
Oh, just a ragged collection of people from sort of, there's actually, I have two podcasts. One's with Alexander and one's with other people. I often talk to intellectuals, and basically it's just conversations with people who I find interesting. And
okay,
there's not a targeted audience at all. It's just. It's hard to say. There is a community, but it's a sort of amorphous community of people who know each other, and a self-organizing bunch of people who with similar interests and curiosities.
Okay. I suppose, if last message or a word I would give particularly to the men whom I met at the European Men's Gathering. First off, hello again. And it was an extraordinarily good time. It was a real blessing for me to be with those men, for those short days. It was, my heart yearned when I had to leave, and I can't wait to get back with them again and to get in other opportunities like that. So, but what I would say is that, through the work that we did that weekend at the EMG, each man looked into his own heart to see what kind of man he could be. We looked at our wounds. We looked at things that held us back. And I think we ended on a note of very great hope and positive vision for the future. How can we be the best men that we can possibly be? And not to let that insight, not to let that excitement, not to let that enthusiasm that we generated there with each other, don't let that flame go out. Hold on to it, and don't just let it, don't just think fondly of it. Oh, that was a lovely time. Yes, we had a great time around the fire or with the movement exercises that Eli provided or whatnot. No, we have to do something with it. There needs to be, this is fundamental what I'm finding in men's work, there needs to be a strong bias for action. We a lot of men, like to sit around and talk about men's issues or talk about where they are. It's easy to devolve kind of into a therapy circle, which sometimes we need, to be sure, but at the end of it, and you say, okay, well, what are you going to do now? What's your very next step? And go out and do that. And at least, you know, the 30 or 40 men that came to me, you know, for a blessing at the end of the gathering, they all had something very hopeful that they were going to do or change in their life and to step forward. Please do that. Do it. Embody it. Live it. Don't just let it be fond memories for you. I saw so much potential in the men that were there. There is so much good. There is so much, good that they can do, ways of improving their lives, contributing to the world, making their world a better place in real ways. If they would all do what they said that they were going to do, they can transfigure the world. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But it can't just be an ideal, it has to be lived. So find a way to embody it and to make it real. And get together with a group of men who can hold you accountable, who can kick your butt now and again if you need to have that done. But make sure that you become the best man that you can be. We need you. The world needs you. Your wives, your children, your partners, your business, your community, everybody needs you. And we need to step up now. We really do. And so please take everything you've got, shoulder as much responsibility as you possibly can, get training for whatever area you need to get training in if you need to get up to snuff, but go out and be a blessing to everyone around you.
Mm-hmm. Father Michael, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I think it will inspire some people, and it certainly has been a great pleasure for me. So.
It's a great pleasure for me also. I look forward to knowing more about you. You said you were teaching this morning. I don't know that much about what you do. I see you carry on, you know, substantive conversations with men who I know are scholars, so I assume that you're one yourself. And I look forward to the day when we can sit down over coffee or a glass of wine or something and chew the fat.
That'd be great. Okay.
All right. Thank you too much.
Thank you too much. Yes. All right. Have a fine afternoon. I guess it's still afternoon over there. Here yes. It's the evening. But
yes, my wife has gotten a free barbecue dinner at our favorite barbecue restaurant.
There you go. That's America.
So yes, God bless America.
God bless America.
So I'm both my boys and their fiance and girlfriend are coming. So this is going to cost me an arm and a leg tonight, but it's okay. We'll have, as we say, the whole family together, and it will be beautiful. And my wife will be celebrated and she'll be happy. So that's all that matters.